I'm Jenna Love from the Somebody You Love podcast. I work in the adult industry, and this question is, what would you consider bad S? And that is a good question, and one that I've not thought too much about, and I'm not sure I have an answer for, but I'm going to give it a go. I think the biggest thing would be not listening. And so that refers to not listening to what your partner says, but it also refers to not listening to the sounds that they're making, not listening or seeing or taking in their facial expressions, their body language. And of course, I don't want this to be misconstrued to suggest that I think that deaf people aren't good in bed. That's not what I'm saying. You can listen in many different ways that are not purely oral. And that's people go on and on about communication being so important. And that's why, because regardless of our abilities or disabilities, we all have different ways of communicating and of receiving information. So, I think that's why I always say, I don't think one person necessarily can be inherently bad in bed, but a combination of people certainly can be bad. And if one person is not putting any of the work in, then the results are going to be that they're bad. That doesn't mean that they just don't have bedroom skills, but it means they maybe are lacking in empathy and human interaction skills. In my work, sometimes I will give people direction. And I don't tend to have to give a hell of a lot of direction because I'm so lucky that my body is quite responsive to a range of different things. So when I do it, as I said, it's really not very complicated. It's generally a case of, can you do it higher up? Or can you go firmer or softer? Something like that, right? It's one direction. And not like the band. And a lot of people will just do that direction, cool, whatever. But I also encounter people who just don't. And I always find that incredibly baffling. And if I've told someone a couple of times and they are just refusing to take on board that information, I tend to just go limp. I just lay there and go, okay, well, you're obviously going to do whatever you're going to do. And to be clear, obviously there are certain things that I'm not going to just lay there and accept. But when it comes to things that are just not pleasing me, I go, okay, well, I'll just lay here, stare at the ceiling. I stop moving, I stop moaning, I stop everything. And they just keep going. And I'm like, this is diabolical. People talk about it, it's hard to understand women. And it's no, sorry. Those are some clear signals. I am not being coy. I'm going. Whereas before I was yeah, and people talk about that people have watched too much porn and that porn's really over the top. And I'm like, well, I'm wondering maybe some people haven't watched it enough because if you're not getting any of those kind of responses, that tells you something. And of course, that's not a great way of communicating. Just going stiff as a board and staring at the ceiling is not communicating. But I've already done the communicating by that point, and they've made it very clear that they don't have any interest in that. So I go, okay, and this, I wouldn't do this in my personal life, but in a work setting, I'm like, well, rightio, obviously this is this is what you want from the booking. So I will just do this until we're done, and then I'll never see you again. Cool, no worries. And the reverse will happen too. I'll be, not making many sounds because not much is happening. And then they go to a spot and I'm like, whoa. And, my body starts responding. And I am somebody who's quite vocal and, was once described as theatrical in bed, which has haunted me ever since. But I think I'm pretty clear with my signals. And then they'll just move straight off that spot. And I'm like, oh, okay. So you don't want me to have the good reaction? It's very strange. So yeah, that's my answer. Not listening. And by listening, I mean looking, paying attention, connecting with the other person. And of course, I understand that for some people, that stuff is not straightforward. But it isn't straightforward for any of us to start with. We all have to learn how to interact with one another and what different signals mean, and how, unfortunately, they're different for every person. So, it is something that it can take a little bit to work out. But I think that's the answer for me. I do think then there's a couple of other things like rhythm, consistency, firmness, like pressure. Like it's not unusual for people to be quite pokey rather than firm. Like I think it's always safer to go in when interacting with another human body with a firm but gentle touch. But some people will go in with like a sharp, pokey touch, and that's, unless it's been directly requested, generally not a good thing. The consistency of rhythm is big. I think maybe like take some music lessons. I don't know, if you're not able to keep up some kind of rhythm and fall into a rhythm with another person. I think that's like a movement class thing. I don't know. But above all, just pay attention to the other person. That's that's the key for me.